Well, the motivation is as high in Nashville as it's been in years. In fact, you have to go back to 2022 to see this level of motivation for home sellers in Nashville. If you're looking at this, Nashville price cuts as a percentage of active listings, you can see it hit a year-to-date high, 41%. If we go back to 2022, we can see, and I didn't track this in October, but in December, it was at 44%. So that was the last time we saw motivation this high. Now, typically, anytime that price cut percentage got above 35%, we would see home values fall. Now, median price is higher year over year, but that doesn't mean that home values aren't falling. I'm going to show you what I would personally use if you're trying to track this and what I would be looking for. But first, let's take a look at some KPIs in Nashville and see if it will give us some clues about how to think about direction of where prices are going and where the softness is. Active listings are up almost 20%. Okay, 9,100. This is 20% higher than last year, and it is that's a large increase, very large increase. To put this in perspective, we have 27 to 28,000 houses that'll sell this year. Okay, so 9,100 would basically mean we're about at a 4-month supply in inventory. Now, historically speaking, you really need to be at a 6-month supply before you start seeing real massive price drops. But what I'm seeing is a lot of volatility underneath the surface. So you do have people saying, oh, prices are dropping. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're not seeing prices drop, but it's not everywhere and it's not everything. And, that's why we're seeing the median price go up. Now, the median price is not what I would use to understand where home values are going, because I do believe there is a shift happening in who is purchasing. In other words, if the shift towards the more expensive houses are being purchased this year, then the median price is going to go up simply because the pool of buyers is buying a different product and it's pushing the median price up. This is why Zillow has a much better way of showing home values. And what they show is a minus 0.2%. Minus 0.2% does not explain the volatility that we're seeing in this market. And there are houses that went from being in high demand to being almost completely useless. That's where you're seeing the Airbnbs that are out of proximity to downtown. You're seeing it in condos, or there's something wrong about the location, the lot, the floor plan of the house. There's enough inventory with 4-month supply. It can completely change the value of that home. And you could see a home 2-3 years ago was worth $500,000 selling for $350,000 to $400,000 today. Any metric right now, any pricing metric, median sales price, even Zillow can't explain some of the volatility that I think a lot of people are experiencing. You look at agents. Agents are feeling like the market is so much slower, even though we have the same demand we had last year. Why? Because we have 20% more active listings. So you even have agents that will say it's slower right now when technically we have the same number of buyers. They just have a lot more options to choose from. And look at contract volume. It's flat. Now, here's the thing about contract volume you need to know. Mortgage rates are almost 1% lower than where they were a year ago. We were headed to 7% by the beginning of November, and we are now at 6.17%. It's almost 1% lower. Okay, so the fact that contract volume is flat to negative tells me this is the best barometer for what's going on in greater Nashville economy. It tells me that there's some softness out there, okay? This number should be going positive over the next couple weeks. If it stays negative, that's softness. You combine that with the motivation, and there's some real, opportunity to be aggressive if you're a buyer. And if you're a seller, you're going to have to be more flexible if you're trying to sell. Now, the other thing to think about, it is October 25th. A month from now is Thanksgiving. You are pushing up against the holidays. This is really the last weekend to buy before inventory starts really dropping. And I can show you that in November. You can see November 1st, massive drop in active listings. I would expect the same thing to happen this November, and trailing off into the end of the year, we're going to see fewer listings. Nonetheless, they're going to be more than last year. And that motivation in Q4 is going to be real. It's growing rapidly. And, you can see it in the price cuts number. If we look at Contract volume by price band. Again, this is showing you that there is a shift happening in those that are purchasing. You can see the 350 to 650 down, the 650 to a million down, and then you get to 1 million and above, and we're talking about double-digit increases. 27 more contracts in the million to 2 million range, 8 more contracts in the 2 million range. Just between those two, you can see that the median price is getting pushed up by the more expensive purchases. And you can see it here. It's actually wild just how much this tracks with the previous year, but just slightly above where it was last year. Let me read this text I sent on July 19th. Hi, Gwen. I know you just listed Sutton. I don't want to waste your time, but I have a buyer that's interested at 1.1 million. Just let me know if that's something your seller will entertain and we can come view it. I realize this is a new listing, so just keep us in mind. If it comes of interest, let me know. Let's go over to Sutton, the one that I was just talking about. And lo and behold, remember I said 1.1 in July. Now they're chasing down the market. They're at 1.1. They just reduced it. They had to reduce it $50K, then $100K, then another $100K. Now they're down to $1.1 million. It was a rental. It's not bad. I mean, it doesn't look bad from the pictures, but it does look pretty average, especially when you look on the outside. Not really updated, not the nicest finishes. Look at this. I mean, that's kind of, they need to pressure wash the back. They need to kind of clean it up a little bit. The deck looks, it looks like it needs some love, So we know this is going to be very average. If we go to my neighborhood tracker, we can come on down here where they are, and you can see transaction volume's been positive, which means that there is interest in this area. But when we focus in on that specific size range, which is 3,700 square feet, what we'll see is that this is now finally on the lower part of where listings have been selling. In fact, now I think it's well priced, right? Let's go to sales price so you can see it here. You can see anything below 1.2 is kind of like on the lower rung, right? That's the lower rung in the past year, 12 months, 18 months. And now we're below that. So prices are now finally dropping in this area. In this one, I think it's interesting. And this is a very good area. If you look at the larger houses, all the larger houses sold for 1.5 or more in this area. And then when you get to the smaller houses is where you're seeing struggling. Look at that comp. Look at that one. Wow. 685, 909 Marengo. Let's take a look at that one. It's a tiny house, 2,800 square feet, 240 a foot. That's what they sold for. I mean, this is what I would be using. Closed 1010, 243 a foot. The roof actually looks pretty decent too from the pictures. It took 14 days to sell too, and it looks like it was 750. So someone offered 685. It was 750. Someone offered 685. Good for them for getting this. And let's see where it's at. Marengo, 1 block away from Sutton. I'd be using that as the comp. I'd be offering 240 a foot is what I'd offer. 240 a foot, 900,000. Wouldn't hesitate to offer 900,000 for this house. Open offer, Gwen. Zillow is showing Nashville's home market is flat, but there's a lot of volatility. The motivation is as high as it's been in years, and we're seeing massive price drops as seen by what I just showed you. Active listings are higher, but we're only at about a 4-month supply in inventory, and contract volume isn't really much different than it was last year at this time, even though mortgage rates are almost 1% lower. If you are thinking about buying right now, this is your last weekend before active listings really start dropping off a cliff until the spring. If you're a seller, it's going to feel 20% slower, even though the same number of buyers are in the market. Let me know what you think's happening in your area. You guys always have great information. And with that, thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you next Saturday. Have a good weekend.